Hello everyone, welcome to the 225 Q&A practice. We're going to start off with defense questioning, and this is a deposition format. Okay, here we go. Ready? Did you have an accountant for the business? Yes. And who was that? His name was Chuck Bouse. Chuck Bouse? Bouse. How do you spell that last name? B-O-U-S, something like that. B-O-U-S-E. And was he an accountant or bookkeeper? Or do you know what he was not an accountant. Maybe he wasn't the certified. I think he was the other. Where was his business located? Ontario. And on what street? Euclid. Do you recall the address? Uh-huh. No. That's a no? No, sorry. That's all right. How long had he been your bookkeeper since we had the business? And then you use the term we. Who is we? My ex-husband and I. Is that Mr. Bueller? Yes. Was he also a cosmetologist? No. What was his business? What was his occupation at the time you bought the business? Grocery checker. Where is he located at this time? I don't know. When did you last have contact with Mr. Bueller? Last year. And where did he reside at that time? Where did who reside? Mr. Bueller, Mount Baldy. And do you know where he lived, in or on Mount Baldy? On a hill. Any address? I don't recall. Had you lived at that same location when you were married to him? Yes. Do you recall what his address was? No. Do you still own the House of Beauty? Yes. And do you work there at this time? Yes. As a cosmetologist? Yes. And do you have any employees at this time? No. Therefore, you yourself are the House of Beauty, as it were? Yes. And how many hours per week do you work there? It's different every day. How many hours either per day or per week? Sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 8 hours, depending on how much I think I can handle. And does it somewhat depend upon how much business is coming in? No. By that I would, well, let me ask you this. On New Year's Eve day, are you pretty busy? No. Why are you not busy on New Year's Eve day if there is any reason? This year, I'm talking about last year, I was fairly busy. The economy now is kind of slow, and I think that has something to do with the New Year's Eve day not being too busy. Also, I book myself so I can handle it, and I don't get frustrated over too many bookings. In a sense, you guide your bookings according to how you feel and the amount of business you think you can handle. Yes. Is there any reason why you feel at times that you have to limit the business that you can take? Most of the time. What is the reason for that? If I'm too busy, then I get frustrated and I don't feel I can do the proper work on the customers if I don't feel capable. What causes you to feel frustrated? Too big of a heavy workload if I overbook myself. And when you mention overbooking yourself, what do you feel consists of overbooking yourself? Okay, I used to be able to do 23 to 14 people a day. Now, once again, 23 to 40, 23 to 14 people a day, haircuts, colors, etc. that you would do in a shop. And now I feel lucky to push 7. You used to be able to handle 23 a day to 14. Yeah, 14 is a number lower than 23. Yes, that was my average day of customers used to be. And now 7 is the max. That's the max. Yeah, that's pushing it. And are you basically doing the same type of services now that you did before the accident? Yes. You mentioned haircuts, colors, whatever, the same. Yes. Before the accident occurred, what time did your place of business open? Say that again. Before April 8, 2009, which I understand to be the date of the accident. We're talking about when did the House of Beauty open for business? The exact date I do not recall. No, I'm talking about the time of day. Oh, 8. And when at the end of the day or evening did you close the shop? Depending on the workload, we would stay open to 8. And at that time before the accident, you had 2 or 3 employees? 2. Were they full-time employees? 1 was full-time and 1 was part-time. Were they both beauticians? Yes. And did you have anyone else working in the business besides those 2 and yourself? My ex-husband, William Bueller. And what would he do? He would do the book work. In March of 2009, if someone was to call to make an appointment to have, strike that. Do you primarily work on women's hair, family hair care, so your children and men? If a female child or otherwise called to make an appointment, get an appointment, who would receive the call? It would be one of the 3 that was working at that time. You or the other 2? One of the 3, yes. Basically, Mr. Bueller did the bookkeeping? Yes. He was not involved in the day-to-day meeting of the public type thing? No. Did you suffer any loss of income as a result of the accident of April 8, 2009? Yes. And what income did you lose? I mean that generally. If you want to be precise, and your attorney may object to this because it's kind of broad, but I want to give you some leeway to describe that. What, if any, loss of income from your business that you have. I can only tell you on a daily basis before the accident how much I made. I could bring in $800 a day. And then now at this time right now, or do you want me to now right after the accident? What do you want to know there? Well, my question was broad, but previous to the accident, before April 8, 2009, it's your estimate that you made about $800 per day. Personally, myself, it doesn't count what the other girls made. In the first quarter of 2009, if you know or have an approximation, what income did you net out of the business, out of the House of Beauty? I do not know. Do you have any approximation at all? I do not know. Did you file an income tax return for the year 2009? Yes. Was that a joint return with Mr. Bueller? It would be at that time, wouldn't it? If you know, yes. Counsel, I don't want to harass her, or what I would like to do is be able to get some information. I gather that she doesn't have a recollection about off the record. Sure, all right, let's go off the record. Back on the record. I'm willing. Go ahead, counsel. Well, I will provide copies of the evidence, written documents showing evidence of income of the House of Beauty. I'm willing to share those with you, Mr. Varden, with the exception that there are some items which are privileged, such as income tax returns. We are still asserting those privileges. Okay, you are certainly entitled to that privilege. May I inquire of your client generally? In April of 2009, did you have any other business other than the House of Beauty? No. Did you have any source of income other than the money derived from the House of Beauty? Me personally? Yes. No. I understand from your husband. He was a grocery checker, so he had income from that? Yes. Did he, as far as you know, have any other income other than which he may have received from the House of Beauty or his work as a grocery checker? No. Did you personally lose any time from work as a cosmetologist as a result of the accident of April 8, 2009? Yes. And approximately how much time did you lose? 4 months. And were those 4 months immediately following the accident? Yes. So from April 8 to approximately August 8 of 2009? Yes. And that was because of your injuries to your neck, back, and the anxiety that you felt? Yes. After August 8, roughly the 4 months after April 8, did you ever lose any time from work? Yes. And how much time did you lose? The question is not coming across. Did you lose any period of time in the sense of days or weeks or months? Or were your hours reduced as far as how much you could do? I guess a combination of the above. When? After August 8, 2009. After the accident? After the 4 months after the accident? After the 4 months after the accident, did I lose any time from work? Yes. And what I'm asking is, what time did you lose from work that you connect with the accident? I would limit myself to what I felt I could handle. Sometimes working 2 days a week, and some with August 8, 2009. If you want August 15, I'm not trying to hold you. Roughly 4 months after the accident that you've lost from work, from then until January 1, 2010, and there we're talking about 3.5 months, 3 to 4 months during that period of time, that 3.5 to 4 months. How much did you work in that period? Well, it would just depend on how I felt that day when I came into work and what the workload allowed. If I could take it, I would do more. If I could take it, I would do more. If I couldn't take it, I would do less. Did you still have those 2 employees on January 1st, 2010? No. How many employees did you have? For a time, approximately 1 month. I did have it on my own, and I believe a month after I did hire an employee that didn't work out. So I let the employee go, then I hired another employee. That employee was with me for about a year. When you returned to work in August of 2009, how many employees did you have? None. And you, wait a minute, the years are mixing me up. 2009, did you say? Right. When you first went back to work, it's my understanding the accident occurred in April, and what you've indicated today, you were off for 4 months, and I gather that you did not work at all during that 4-month period. Am I correct? Yes. And then you started to work an hour a day and up to 10 hours a day, I gather, on a gradual basis. At the time you returned to work, how many employees did you have? None. And during the next 3 or 4 month period, you did hire someone? Yes. And one person briefly? Yes. Someone else didn't work out very well? Yes. And then someone stayed a year? Yes. When you had those people, when they worked for you, did they work on a regular basis? No. Kind of depending upon what appointments were made? Yes. And were they salaried or paid by the hour? Both. And when you went back to work in August, did you have any recollection as far as how regularly you yourself worked? Not very regular. Can you give me any range of how often you worked? Yes, I would work when I felt I could capably handle it, depending on what it was that day that would come in for the service. If I felt I couldn't handle the workload, I would not book the customers. I would sit and answer the phone. In your business, generally appointments are set up in advance. No, not necessarily. We take walk-ins too. And would it be when you yourself could handle the walk-ins? Yes. When I say the service is for them, you'd do it or decline and have an employee do it for you? If there was an employee available that could handle it, yes, I would have an employee do it. And with respect to the people who work for you, were they considered employees or were they independent contractors within your... One was an independent contractor and the other one was an employee. So for the employee, you paid Social Security and yes, and for the independent contractor, he or she received part of the fee for the service and perhaps paid something for using your premises and what have you. Yes. Now, as of January 1, 2010, and now we're talking about approximately 8 months after the accident, were you working at the House of Beauty at that time? Yes. And how regularly were you working at that time? As regular as I felt I could handle it. And what caused you, if anything, to feel you couldn't handle the work? Tension. How would you feel that sensation or feel tense? If there was a family problem, I would get upset and not be able to handle the workload. If I was driving to work and I saw something, maybe a dog got hit or a car accident, I wouldn't be able to handle the workload for that day. That's tension, nerves, and anxiety. Things would upset me very easily. You mentioned a family problem. Was that with Mr. Bueller? At that time, I don't believe I was with Mr. Bueller, but he was harassing me. In what way was he harassing you? Calling me on my cell, bothering me. Would he call you at work? Yes. Would he call you at your place of residence? Yes, all the time, everywhere, every hour. You describe family problems, and would that be involving him? A family problem could have been my mother or my father being in the hospital. What is your mother's name? Mariella. And how do you spell that? Mariella. Is that one word? Yes. And her last name? Jessen. The spelling of that name? It is Jessen. Is she still living? Yes. And your father's name? Hugh. Jessen. Okay. And is he still living? Yes. In April 2009, approximately the month anyway, of the date of the accident, were you having any family problems, or were they being your parents, having any family problems? No. All right, and that concludes our 225 Q&A practice.